Imagine a 51-year-old mother, a woman of faith, known for always helping others, suddenly taken from her family inside her own home on a quiet October night. For 24 long years, her daughter has lived in the agonizing quiet of a cold case, slowly accepting the devastating thought that her mother's killer will never be caught. You think time has swallowed the truth. You think the file has been forgotten on a shelf. But decades later, a single detective opens a dusty box of notes left behind by a retired cop, and a sudden, unexpected confession in a dark interrogation room brings a 24-year nightmare to a stunning end. Good evening. I'm Marcus Hayes, and tonight on Case Files After Dark, we are stepping back to the year 2002 to uncover a staggering breakthrough right in our own backyard. This is the 24-year cold case of Betty Moore. To understand the weight of this case, we have to travel back to the fall of 2002 in High Point, North Carolina. 51-year-old Betty Moore was a pillar of her community. Her daughter, Amy Russell, would later describe her as a great woman of God, someone who was deeply compassionate and always looking for ways to lend a helping hand to anyone in need. Betty lived in a modest home on Coltrane Avenue, a quiet residential street in High Point. But on Sunday, October 13th, 2002, an unimaginable horror crossed her threshold. Someone entered Betty's home, attacked her, and brutally took her life. When investigators arrived at the scene, the reality was grim. An autopsy would later confirm that Betty's cause of death was asphyxiation. She had been ruthlessly strangled to death inside her own sanctuary. The initial investigation was spearheaded by High Point Police Detective M. McNeil. McNeil poured everything he had into the case, tracking down every lead and examining the immediate neighborhood. He actually identified a key person of interest early on, a local man with a dark history named Ricky Cox. But back in 2002, without modern forensic tech or a confession, detectives simply didn't have the probable cause needed to make an arrest. The trail stalled. In 2007, Detective McNeil retired from the department, leaving behind a heavily detailed, meticulous box of notes on Betty's case, hoping that one day someone would finish what he started. Years dissolved into decades. For 24 years, Betty's family carried the heavy, quiet burden of grief. Her daughter Amy grew up, lived her life, and eventually came to a painful conclusion. She honestly believed the case would stay cold forever, that her mother's killer would simply run out the clock on justice. Meanwhile, the man originally suspected of the crime, Ricky Cox, continued living his life. In 2004, just 2 years after Betty's murder, Cox was convicted of unrelated violent offenses, including second-degree rape and second-degree kidnapping. He served a lengthy prison sentence, eventually being released in 2020, returning right back to the streets of High Point as a free man. It seemed like the system had completely forgotten about the tragedy on Coltrane Avenue. But cold cases have a way of waiting in the shadows until the right person shines a light on them. Enter Detective Dan Sellers of the High Point Police Department's Violent Crimes Unit. Detective Sellers had a deep passion for cold cases, refusing to let forgotten victims stay forgotten. In late 2025, Sellers pulled the 2002 file on Betty Moore. As he turned the faded pages, he realized that the retired Detective McNeil had left behind a goldmine of accurate, incredibly detailed reports. McNeil's original instincts had been sharp, and Sellers knew exactly who he needed to find. In November of 2025, Detective Sellers formulated a strategic plan and tracked down Ricky Cox, who was now 61 years old and still living in the High Point area. Sellers brought Cox into an interrogation room. The environment was quiet, intense, and heavily weighted with 24 years of unpunished crime. But instead of running into a brick wall of denials, Detective Sellers' strategy worked flawlessly. Cox, facing the relentless persistence and detailed evidence compiled across 2 generations of police work, began to cooperate. Over a series of intense interviews spanning November and December of 2025, Cox began to talk. He provided investigators with brand new, intimate details about the night of October 13, 2002. Details that had never been released to the public. Details that only the killer could have known. Ultimately, Ricky Cox confessed to the murder of Betty Moore. According to Betty's family, she didn't even know Cox. He was a stranger who had stolen her life. Cox's detailed admissions gave investigators the final, critical pieces of the puzzle they had been hunting for since the turn of the millennium. After months of corroborating Cox's confession and finalizing the paperwork, the hammer of justice finally dropped. On February 3, 2026, the High Point Police Department officially arrested 61-year-old Ricky Dean Cox, booking him into the Guilford County Jail under no bond. He has been formally charged with second-degree murder for the 2002 death of Betty Moore. High Point Police Chief Curtis Cheeks III released a powerful statement praising the relentless dedication of his detectives, stating, "We do not forget about these cases no matter how much time goes by. The impact and the grief families carry is not lost on us." For Betty's daughter, Amy, the news was a stunning shock. After 24 years of believing the mystery was permanent, she finally received the phone call she never thought would come. The long-awaited closure had arrived. Betty Moore was a woman of God who spent her life helping others, and her memory was fiercely protected by the detectives who refused to let her case fade into history. It took 24 years, but the shadows finally had to give her name back. It just goes to show you, no matter how much time passes, the truth always finds a way out of the dark. What do you think about the incredible police work that solved this 24-year-old mystery? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm Marcus Hayes, and this is Case Files After Dark. Stay safe out there, North Carolina.